It was midday in the Greek land of Boeotia. The shadows of the trees were tight rings around their trunks as the sun, riding his golden chariot, finished half his course across the sky. The young Prince Actaeon sauntered carefree through these woods, tired but perfectly satisfied after a morning hunt, and leaned himself up against a tree to rest. Actaeon was the grandson of the famous hero Cadmus, and spent most of his days in the cool green of the forests outside his city of Thebes, attended by a circle of friends and a loyal team of sleek dogs, pursuing his favorite sport. It was here, in the deep of the trackless woods, amid the rocks and trees and dappled sunlight, that Actaeon the hunter felt most at home. He was a boy eager to win glory, who took pride in his skill. He reveled in the thrill of the chase and the kill, his hot blood stirred by every victory over the beasts his hounds would chase down. It was here, in his favorite hunting grounds, among his friends and his dogs, that Actaeon's tale would take a grim and unexpected turn. His bow and quiver on his back, and his spear in his hand, Actaeon wiped the sweat from his brow, and turned to his loyal companions with a cheerful smile. "I'd say we've had enough good fortune for one day, dear friends. Let's get back home and rest, and clean these nets and weapons of ours. Tomorrow will come soon enough. When Eos wakes and brings us another day, we'll see these woods again." The others agreed and began to ready their gear and round up their dogs for the journey back to Thebes. Now, the young prince was never one to be found standing still and waiting, and while his friends readied themselves, he began wandering off alone through the trees in the direction of what he assumed was the path home. Soon, he was out of sight of his hunting party, lost in the thick shade. It so happened, on this very day, in another part of these same Boeotian woods, that someone else's hunting party had also finished its chase under the noonday sun. The divine entourage of the goddess Artemis trailed through the woods as their huntress queen, slinging her silver bow over her shoulder, headed for one of her favorite forest retreats to wash and relax. There's a place deep in this forest, a hidden cave sculpted from the soft rock by nature's artistry. Inside the cave, a spring bubbled up from beneath the earth, creating a pool of cool, clear water surrounded by a blanket of green grass. This was a place well suited for a queen of the wilderness, and was especially sacred to Artemis, among her favorite earthly homes. It was here that the goddess arrived now, the cave's crisp air welcoming her within. She and her companions rested their finely wrought gear by the pool, and the goddess, ready to wash after the morning's exercise, stepped up to the glistening pool. Her attendants unfastened her sandals. Another gathered the hair over her neck and shoulders into a knot, and one more removed her clothing. The virgin goddess sank naked into the pool, laying back blissfully in the calm of the shaded spring. Her attendants brought jars, gathered up water, and poured them over her as she bathed. And the waters poured out within this idyllic place echoed through the cave, and into the woodlands around it. It was through these very woods that the young hunter Actaeon was wandering, tired, daydreaming, and unaware that he had strayed from the path back to Thebes. From afar at first, the sound met the prince's ears, and he stopped to listen. Gently, but unmistakably, he heard the sound of trickling water emanating from somewhere nearby. He was intrigued, and curiosity took hold. He scanned his surroundings and sought out where it was coming from. And when he was led, finally, to a thick hedge of trees, he parted the branches and explored beyond to find a hidden cave, sculpted from the rock, resounding with the echo of pouring water. The chill wind from the cavern's mouth sent a chill up his arms, and he was drawn in at once by his rampant curiosity, as well as the allure of a shady relief from the hot noonday sun. And so, thinking nothing of it, Actaeon entered the cave. And there he came face to face with the divine party of huntress maidens, incredible to behold, with their clothing and gear glistening, and standing luminously in the middle of the pool, the virgin goddess herself in her bath. It was as if time froze for an instant. Actaeon stopped dead in his tracks, and every eye in the cave fixed on him immediately, and no eyes were more piercing than those of the naked Artemis. It took no time at all for Actaeon to recognize divinity when he saw it, and to realize his own grave mistake. His wide eyes had met the goddess's perfect immortal form, a sight allowed to no man. After the moment of shock had passed, Artemis's handmaidens rushed forward to surround the goddess, shielding her from forbidden sight. But she herself, standing majestically above the others in the pool, made no effort to hide herself or shrink away. Rather, she kept her cold eyes trained on the trespasser, visibly wrathful as a reddish glow darkened her face. Actaeon barely had time to start backtracking, and the angry goddess hissed with words like sharp daggers. "Get out of here, you worthless mortal. Why don't you go tell your friends about the naked goddess you've seen? Oh, but wait. Let's see if you can." If she had had her silver bow and arrows in her hands, she would have pierced Actaeon right there with a swift shot. But instead, slowly and deliberately, she dipped her fingers into the pool and sent up a splash that caught Actaeon with a gentle shower of water. Actaeon was baffled at what the goddess had just done, but had no intention to stay and figure it out. Regaining his wits, the hunter whirled around and sprinted out of the cavern, leaving it all behind. His mind racing, he was glad to escape, but he feared the goddess's wrath, and cursed the fate that had led him to wander there. He kept running, imagining a whole team of nymphs with arrows ready at his back. And as he hurtled through the woods, in mid-stride, that's when Artemis's punishment revealed itself. The first thing Actaeon felt was a sudden throbbing in his forehead, where, if he had felt it with his hand, he would have found two sharp horns were beginning to surge out from his temples. At the same time, his neck started changing shape, lengthening up and out from his shoulders. His ears got longer and pointed upwards with furry tips at the ends. Actaeon all of a sudden felt himself moving more swiftly than ever, as if he were running on 4 legs instead of 2. And so he was, as his arms and legs jutted out and narrowed, and his hands and feet left hoof marks on the forest floor. He leapt into the air to clear a bush in a single bound, and when he landed on the other side, gone were his clothes and human skin, all of it transformed into a brown, furry hide. Fearful and desperate, trying to stay in control of where he was in the deep woods, he raced back to find his hunting party, seeking the safety of his old friends. Along the way, he ran across a slow-moving stream, and recognized in the place of his own reflection, not a human face, but the form of a stag. He reeled back on his haunches, and shook his antlered head in terrified disbelief. He tried to cry out with words, but no words came, only a hoarse animal moan. How could he rejoin his friends in the forest, or his family in the palace at Thebes? The only thing human left of poor Actaeon was his mind, trapped in the body of a deer. But there was no time for him to dwell on his fate. The goddess's curse had seen to that. Actaeon's pointed ears pricked up as a familiar sound broke the still air of the woods. The throaty, bloodthirsty baying of his own hounds. The thought of his beloved hunting team brought a moment of relief in his misery. But this quickly gave way to a chilling dread, as Actaeon took in the full scope of the danger. The hunter had become the prey. The scent they were chasing was his. He heard the dogs scrambling through the brush and rocks, conjuring in his mind's eye their sharp teeth and claws. They appeared on the horizon through the trees, driving toward him with ferocious energy, hungry for blood. Young Actaeon knew every one of their names and their breeds. He had trained them, sharpened their instincts, and made them into the perfect killers. Out of reflex, he opened his mouth to shout to them, in hopes they would recognize their master, but only the groan of a stag escaped from his throat. And now he heard human voices, his own companions driving on the dogs from the rear, and, most cruelly of all, shouting for Actaeon to join the thrill of their hunt. With no power to answer and stop them, he turned away and rushed in the other direction, loping through the hunting grounds where he himself, at the rear of his team, had slain countless prize animals. And onward he ran, as he felt the sleek hounds gaining on him, all the while gruesome visions of his prey from hunts past flashing before his eyes. He bounded with all his might, with all his will to escape. But he knew, in his still human mind, that no stag of the Boeotian woods could outrun Actaeon's hounds. This was the end of the young hunter's tale, torn piece by piece by the bloody fangs of his own dogs. And when this hapless mortal, a victim of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, had breathed his last breath, only then was the wrath of Artemis satisfied, and the goddess with her team made their way home to the glory of Mount Olympus.